Hi everyone, good evening. Very happy Sunday to everyone. And we are yet here with another Diabetes panel with our community members. आज का conversation बहुत interesting होने वाला है क्योंकि जिनको मालूम है we celebrate a particular theme every month at Diabetes, and this time it's right to timely diagnosis. अब ये right to timely diagnosis इतना important क्यों है? Before that, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Deeksha, and I've been living with type 1 for last 23 years, and I'm the Director of Advocacy and Experiences at the Diabetes Foundation. अभी चलते हैं right to timely diagnosis पे. सो राइट टू टाइमली डायग्नोसिस इसलिए इम्पॉर्टेंट है बिकॉज हमारा JDRF का T1D इंडेक्स सजेस्ट करता है दैट इंडिया में 8.9% चिल्ड्रन who develop type 1 diabetes are never diagnosed. And not getting diagnosed means कि आपको पता ही नहीं चलेगा कि आपको इंसुलिन पे अभी जाना है. So that leads us to 9,02,172. I don't want to use the word death, but that's the reality. And these are the number of people who should have been alive, which basically means कि ये estimate है उन लोगों का जो अभी भी जिंदा होते अगर उनका diagnosis delayed ना होता, misdiagnosis ना होता या complications ना आती condition से again because the diagnosis got delayed. Now the point is कि हम इसके बारे में कर क्या सकते हैं. The first line of action that I can think of is to look out for signs. When I talk about looking out for signs, I am talking about the 4 T's that we look at. तो अगर आपका weight loss हो रहा है बहुत ज़्यादा एकदम से ही, which is unexplained completely, so that's what we call thinner. अगर आपको बार बार वॉशरूम यूज करना पड़ रहा है, द अनयूजुअल अमाउंट, इट्स नॉट द ट्वाइस और थ्राइस और 4 times a day, but you are using it after every 30 minutes. That's toilet. That is your second T. The third T is tired. If you are tired all the time and you can't explain it, it's unexplained fatigue. That's your third T. एंड योर फोर्थ टी इज थर्स्ट, कि आपको बहुत ज्यादा प्यास लग रही है. जब मुझे डायग्नोस हुआ था टाइप 1, आई वाज 4 years old, एंड आई रिमेम्बर आई वाज ड्रिंकिंग वाटर in an unusual amount for a 4-year-old, and that's how my parents thought कि there is something wrong. अगर मुझे इसको हिंदी में ट्रांसलेट करना है तो हम 4 प की बात करते हैं. पतला होना, बहुत ज्यादा पेशाब करना, पस्त होना और प्यास लगना. आज हम इन साइंस और सिम्टम्स की बात करने वाले हैं, बट आई टेल यू वन थिंग. हाउ आई गॉट डायग्नोस्ड, द प्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ माय साइंस एंड सिम्टम्स were very different than all the people, than a lot of other people. So that's what we want to talk about today, how the presentation of signs and symptoms of diagnosis can look very different for each one of us. I had to be hospitalized for a week. A lot of people, because they catch it early on, उनको वो कीटोएसिडोसिस में नहीं जाते हैं और पहले ही डिटेक्ट करके उनको इंसुलिन पे डाल दिया जाता है. So I want to invite our panelists today who have very humbly decided to share their diagnosis story with us today. So I would like to ask Sakshi, Sandhya, Dhruvi, and Shivangi to turn on their cameras and just say hello to everyone who's watching us today.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, I was telling these girls how I like this is an all-girls panel, and this is coincidental. But thank you so much to each one of you for coming here and sharing your story. First of all, I mean, this will give a lot of insight to people of how the presentation of signs and symptoms look very different for each of us. Right. So we'll also discuss that as and when it comes. But I want to start with Sakshi. If you can just introduce yourself and give us a little detail, just take us a little into your diagnosis story.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Sakshi. I'm currently 27 years old and I got diagnosed 9 months back when I was 26, a very rare age to get diagnosed. I thought when it's not. Um, I was losing a lot of weight. मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा weight loss. I thought I was, मैं हमेशा से पतली थी, but the drastic unhealthy weight loss, सब बोल रहे थे कि कुछ गड़बड़ है, इतना इतना suddenly, इतना एक साल इतना सारा weight loss, कुछ तो गड़बड़ है. And I'm a doctor myself. My parents are doctors. My friends, my family, my colleagues, my teachers, I am surrounded by doctors 24/7. And everyone could notice कि कुछ problem है, कुछ गड़बड़ है, but no one could pinpoint कि क्या हो रहा है. I joined my post graduation in ophthalmology. So सबको लगा कि वो change की वजह से, lifestyle change की वजह से, stress, work schedule, उस सब की वजह से I was losing all this weight. Then slowly I started noticing. I'm sure पहले से होगा, लेकिन मुझे ध्यान आया कि मैं बहुत ज्यादा पानी पी रही हूँ, मैं बहुत ज्यादा वॉशरूम यूज कर रही हूँ. I am losing hair. I'm eating so much but not gaining anything. And at that sudden sweet craving, I was never a sweet tooth, but मुझे हर मील के बाद कुछ मीठा चाहिए, मुझे आइसक्रीम खानी है. So I kept telling my friends and my colleagues ऐसे ही मजाक में, यार मुझे लग रहा है मुझे डायबिटीज हो गया है. And everyone was just like, पागल है क्या तू, 26 साल की है, ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है, नहीं होगा, ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है. एंड मोर देन एनीबडी एल्स आई फील मुझे खुद को डिनायल था. हाँ, कुछ न्यूट्रिशनल डेफिशिएंसी होगी, मैं B12 खा लेती हूँ, मैं विटामिन डी खा लेती हूँ, मैं ये कर लेती हूँ, मेरी डाइट ही अच्छी नहीं है, I'll make it more healthy. मैं अब से एग्स खाऊंगी, I'll eat bananas and I'll eat cheese and whatever. Nothing would work. Then one day randomly I just sent my regular investigations. I got my sugar checked. I picked up a glucometer and उस दिन मैंने lunch में इतनी मिठाई खाई थी and the value was 345. I will never forget that number. And I just got to know that I was a diabetic. उसके बाद भी there were questions if I was a type 1 or a type 2 because the age in question is like that. But then we eventually जो भी C peptide and जितने भी tests होते हैं वो सब करा के we got to know that I'm a type 1. And yeah, so that's how I got diagnosed.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Sakshi. I want to understand that how did all of you miss out on the signs? Like you already said that it was denial, but I just want to understand ke kitna der, what was the span through which you started seeing those, signs?
I think my weight loss started about a year and a half, around sometime around that, more probably a year before I got diagnosed. But major symptoms सारे ये thirst and ये सब कुछ and blurring. I had a few episodes of थोड़ा धुंधला दिखना, especially while operating. I'll be doing surgery and मुझे दिख नहीं रहा, and I used to get so irritated कि क्या हो रहा है, and I try to justify it कि नहीं ठीक है, मेरे specs का कुछ होगा, मेरे contact lenses में कुछ होगा, वो सब. But I think about at least definitely for 6 months, maybe a year, that we ignored all the symptoms. And I feel this happened because first of all, I didn't have all the cluster of symptoms together. I feel they presented at very different times, and I always had a justification for each one of them. Like जैसे मुझे नहीं दिख रहा था तो मुझे लगा कि हाँ ये कॉन्टैक्ट लेंस की वजह से है, या मेरे ग्लासेस का पावर चेंज हुआ है, या कुछ ना कुछ. Plus, I feel because my age, second thing was my age, that I was 26 years old, and you tend to expect कि type 1 होगा बच्चों में और type 2 होगा बुढ़ों में, and I was not fitting into any of those age criteria. And the third thing was the change in the climate and my place and my lifestyle, which I felt is causing all of that. So yeah, there is definitely denial that you feel कि और भी कुछ. In fact, बहुत मेरे फ्रेंड्स ने तो ये भी मजाक किया था कि अरे टीबी होगा, HIV होगा, कैंसर होगा, पता नहीं क्या क्या तो नहीं सोच लिया था. But it was such a basic diagnosis. Diabetes is so common, so prevalent, and it's really sad that इतनी basic common सी चीज मिस हो गई इतने सारे डॉक्टर्स से. And बाद में सबको गिल्ट था, बाद में सबका रिएक्शन यही था कि कैसे मिस हो गया, ये कैसे रह गया हमसे. For that matter, myself, I feel कि मुझे कहीं ना कहीं तो internally पता था, because I was cracking jokes about it to my friends. तो मुझे खुद को सोचना चाहिए था कि जब मुझे खुद को पता था तो मैंने क्यों नहीं पहले टेस्ट किया. But हाँ, I mean a lot of people get diagnosed when they end up in DK, and that didn't happen to me. वो ICU stay and वो सब, I got diagnosed pretty early, and I feel कि I could have prevented it, and I could have diagnosed myself a lot more prior to when I did, but at least I didn't get bad.
Absolutely. And just want to, of course, because you're a medical professional, I'm sure, I am assuming that you were put on insulin immediately. Yeah, there was a delay in that as well.
I was started on insulin immediately, but I was also started on oral medications.
Mhm.
I was put on metformin and gliptins and all of those combinations because for people to test your C peptide, which tells you, or even your GAD, which tells you if you're a type 1 or a type 2, you need your sugar levels to be in control, because otherwise, wo values false aati hain. So there is obviously a certain diagnostic dilemma between that time till your sugars get controlled. So it took me about 15 to 20 days to get my sugar levels in control, because I was at a very high level. Maybe fasting 300, I say, and postprandial used to be 500 by HbA1c was 15. So उस टाइम पे I was in ketosis, ketone bodies 4 plus, and वो जो value, वो जो urine stick पे मैंने जो ketone वो dark होते हुए दिखा था, it was very scary. I know. But yeah, so about 15 days later, when they did my C peptide and my GAD levels, is when they realized that it's type 1, and then we stopped the oral medications.
Right. And you were put on insulin immediately.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sakshi. That I felt was very insightful for whosoever is watching. I think I learned a lot from this.
I feel ki everyone should go through a yearly regular checkup investigations, and especially if you feel that there is something wrong with you, you should
Right.
not delay. You should just pick it up. Okay, I know ki you don't want to know the result to some point, but it'll definitely be better over time. Like maybe you will take some time to get used to the whatever the result is, and I hope that it's all good.
Absolutely. And I think as a type 1, all of the people who are a part of this panel would resonate that even right, if we go for blood tests now, वो थोड़ी एंजाइटी तो होती है. So even for a person who is not living with any kind of condition, it feels a little daunting कि अच्छा कुछ आ गया तो. That's why we avoid it. But no, as you said,
They are called tests and exams for a reason. I
yes,
know, I get.
exactly.
But I know how doctors can be intimidating, but as from the medical fraternity, we're all here to help you, and I'm sure that everything is going to be okay in the end.
Absolutely. No, but thank you so much that you said a very important thing that despite of not having anything, just get an yearly checkup done. Thank you for sharing, Sakshi. It was so
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you for having.
All right. So I think Sakshi's story does tell us one thing that despite of you being surrounded by people who can diagnose you immediately, sometimes there is a delay if we do not look at the signs and symptoms or are in denial. कि अच्छा दिख भी रहा है, but I don't want to know or I don't want to accept that this is this. But I think as soon as we get something, if we see that there's something not right with us, we need to take an action immediately. And with this, I'm just gonna call our next panelist, Dhruvi. So, Dhruvi, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, hello everyone.
Hi, if you can
Um,
quickly introduce yourself and share your diagnosis story.
Hello, I'm Dhruvi, and I am currently 23, and I've been a type 1 since about 5 to 6 years now. So, for me, my diagnosis story is a little bit different. Actually, I have a younger sister जो मुझसे पहले diagnosed हुई थी, and she was quite young तभी. तो जब उसका diagnosis हुआ, she had the same symptoms. मतलब she used to feel a lot of thirsty. She used to eat a lot of food. वो बहुत पतली होती जा रही थी. So उसको जब diagnose हुआ तब one of our family doctors उन्होंने suggest किया कि why don't you get her tested as well? Like why don't we get me tested as well? It's very rare कि दो siblings को type 1 diabetes होगा, but एक बार बस test करवा लो for the better. So eventually हमने टेस्ट किए and we were all sure कि कुछ नहीं आएगा because ये genetic condition नहीं है तो दो siblings को होना it's not possible. So मेरे results I very vividly remember they came out to be that a good control over diabetes. So हमारे सब फैमिली में सबको लगा कि that's fine मतलब everything's normal करके then actually जब मेरे my parents they intended to मेरी sister के checkup के लिए जा रहे थे and they accidentally took my report cards to the doctor and that's when the doctor said कि अरे नहीं ये कौन है इनको भी diabetes है good control over diabetes is actually for somebody जिनको already diabetes है. So that's how we find out कि अच्छा we did get antibody tests and eventually I realized कि oh, I'm also going in the same line in the same direction. And yeah, after that, I used to monitor continuously, matlab, not regular, continuously, but rather regularly, do my blood tests just to ensure that everything was fine. So my sister was diagnosed in 2014, and I remember in 2017 when I was doing my regular checkups or सब कुछ, तो तभी मुझे realize हुआ कि oh my sugars are actually rising down. So then we eventually consulted the doctors and I was started on oral medication first and उसके बाद eventually I started with the Lantus shots or the rapid and yeah I became a type 1 diabetic.
Thank you so much, Dhruvi. This is very intriguing. A lot of times we don't expect the other child, if there are two siblings, right? The other child to also develop type 1. But uh, I mean, how was the experience for you? I mean, were you anticipating this at any point of time? I know for a fact that for me or for anyone else, this was not something that we anticipated at all. But having a sibling already who is living with type 1, um, kahin na kahin in the back of the head, did you have this that what if I also develop this?
Yeah, I very vividly remember कि जब ये हुआ, like I knew reports सब बोल रहे थे कि eventually मुझे आएगा, but somewhere down the line I was in denial कि it's still a long way to go, it's still a long way to go. So I used to joke with my sister like, what if we both turned out to be diabetics in the future, then we would compete who gets the better blood sugars and all of that. So yeah, it was a kind of a slow onset for me, and even I very vividly remember वो केस में मेरी सिस्टर को उसको कुछ भी खाना हो करना हो she could easily take insulin shots and उनको उस हिसाब से कुछ मन हुआ कुछ खाने का तो she could eat that. But मेरे केस में मैं इंसुलिन भी नहीं ले पा रही थी and मैं कुछ मनपसंद खा भी नहीं पा रही थी. So it was slow onset, but I'm definitely grateful कि उसकी वजह से timely diagnosis की वजह से काफी चीजें जो मतलब मेरी सिस्टर के साथ हुई उससे आई वाज मतलब वो प्रिवेंट हो गई.
Correct. And as you already mentioned, like what was the frequency of your monitoring? Since it was a slow onset, so were you monitoring every day? Like from
No.
when your sister got diagnosed, तब से ही were you monitoring every day, or uh, after the reports came and then that's when you just started getting a little more aware?
नहीं एक्चुअली आई यूज नॉट डेफिनेटली मैं रोज मॉनिटर नहीं करती थी बट मे बी वंस इन एवरी 2 weeks or something I used to since already we had a glucometer so I used
Right.
to check उसमें sugars and see. So starting में it was fine. So that's when the denial mode came on. I don't think that's going to happen. But then eventually, as time spent, तभी मुझे realize हुआ, okay, no, it's happening.
Also, I just want to know, from a type 1 perspective, since you already saw somebody who was living with it, and then also the fact that it was a slow onset, how was the acceptance for you?
It was, as I'm saying, काफी difficult था. But at the same time, मुझे चीजें understand करने में it is ऐसा नहीं हुआ कि it all of a sudden dawned upon me or something. I was a caregiver first, and उसके बाद I became a diabetic. So I think kind of उसकी वजह से I was already there in that mental condition. एंड मेरे लिए बेटर हो रहा था सब कुछ हैंडल करना कंपेयर टू अगर मैंने मेरी बहन को देखा है ऑल ऑफ अ सडन अगर किसी दिन तुम्हें कोई बोले यू हैव टू स्टार्ट टेकिंग इंजेक्शंस तो ऑब्वियसली दैट इज डिफिकल्ट.
Right. But thank you so much, Dhruvi. And I mean, this is one thing, this is a takeaway for all of the people who are watching this, that if one child already has it, do go for a genetic testing if possible for the other child as well, just in case.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah,
We hope you don't turn out to be one of them, but
absolutely.
obviously it's
But we
possible.
are then one of a kind.
True.
Thank you so much, Dhruvi. I will come back to you in a while. Uh,
Sure.
So again, this was one story that really did not. I mean, this was very intriguing for us to see that बहुत बार हम ये anticipate नहीं करते हैं कि sibling को भी हो जाए, but how to manage when both the children have type 1, we understand that it is difficult, but this also brings out a point of awareness, that you have to be aware about the fact that there are chances, there is a possibility. We hope that that does not happen at all, but again, there's always a chance. There was always a probability with us, and that's why we are here today. And we have Shivangi with us now. Shivangi, can you please quickly introduce yourself and share
Hi.
your as well?
Yeah, I'm Shivangi. I'm a 21-year-old. I've been a type 1 diabetic for the past 11 years now. And the way I got diagnosed is quite interesting. So back then, 11 years from now, in 2012, I used to study in a school in Mount Abu, and I used to live in a hostel there. So every year I would come back from the hostel to my home. We used to have a 3-month long vacation in winter. We used to have a winter break then. And both my parents, being pediatricians, they would do all of their regular basic health checkups and everything. As soon as we would come back, they would ask us to climb up on the weighing machine, note down our weight and everything. Yeah, so this time around as well, when I went back to the hostel, my new year was starting. Um, I think 2 or 3 months from then, I started noticing all of these symptoms. Excessive thirst, I would wake up from my sleep, बहुत प्यास लगना. मैंने वापस I started wetting my bed at the age of 10. And the thing then was that it was very difficult for me to explain these things to the kids around me. मेरी वार्डन को भी समझाना, she had to get up and help me clean everything in the middle of the night, which was again a difficult thing for her. And partly, I was also suffering from the mental thing from all of the kids around me who would look at me and be like, "Oh my God, she's been wetting her bed again. What is wrong with her?" So the same year, I went back home, and my mother, she noticed that I had lost a lot of weight. Then she just took a glucometer and checked my blood sugar, and I still remember that the number was 507, and I was immediately put on multiple injections soon after. So that is my diagnosis story, and I think I was privileged enough because both my parents were pediatricians. They knew what was going on here, so they could help me out, and I was diagnosed timely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shivangi. It's very interesting to see, how your symptoms sort of came during your time at your hostel. I just want to understand what was the duration, like what was the span when you started seeing the symptoms, and कब तक ये चला, and when were you put on insulin?
So I started seeing all of the symptoms from around the month of February, and when I went back home, it was April. So it was hardly a span of 2 to 3 months of me experiencing all of those symptoms. But again, I would suggest that if more and more people, say our teachers, our wardens, and the kids themselves, if they know all of these symptoms, this is something that can be diagnosed more earlier.
Absolutely. And also just, the fact that, did you rationalize it? Pehle, when the first day, when you wet the bed or you saw that first sign, you thought of, कि अच्छा, कुछ है, there's something. Did you rationalize it? Because I'm sure you did not expect or know about the signs and symptoms at all.
You are
So,
completely right. I
yeah.
did not know what was going on. I was very surprised by what was happening because I was at an age wherein I had already stopped wetting my bed and I was out of that age. So when I started wetting the bed again, that was something that was a shock for me.
Right. And in the month of April, you were put on insulin, like immediately, or again, there were tests that happened, and then there was a delay. Okay, immediately, since your parents are pediatricians.
Yeah, since both of them are pediatricians, so they got into contact with an endocrinologist from Ahmedabad
Yeah.
and they put me on Humalog and Lentus immediately.
Great. Thank you so much, Shivangi. This was what you
Thank you.
said is very right. That more teachers and wardens, if they start noticing these signs कि अच्छा बच्चा बार बार जो है वॉशरूम जा रहा है या बेड वेटिंग हो रही है, which is unusual, uh, they need to know this. They can catch the condition pretty early then. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Shivangi.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have Sandhya with us. So, Sandhya, can you quickly come and introduce yourself and also
Hi.
share your diagnosis story? Hello.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm Sandhya. I was diagnosed when I was 18, 12 years ago, and I think everything sort of fell in place. A lot of unexplainable things that were happening in my body over a span of 2 weeks. It and I feel like whatever little that I knew about diabetes at the time, just that it's an old people disease. Only old people have it. There were like a few distant relatives who were much older, like my grandma's generation, who had it. So that was the little that I knew about it. And the very first sign that I saw was my vision getting blurred. And I used to, I don't know, I had gotten like compliments like, oh, nothing misses your eyes, and that, like your eyesight is so good and all of that. And then after that,
Sandhya, you are on.
I was in college. It just felt so wrong. It was like, oh my God, there's definitely something that's way off. But we just thought it was maybe a power thing. And I think like I waited for about a week before I was like, okay, this does it. I need to go to an ophthalmologist. And I get prescription glasses. And then through the glasses, I think day two of wearing the glasses, my vision is blurring. So that's when it feels like, okay, you know what, there's just way too many things that are off about this. And from my parents, and they were sort of pacifying me, being like, you know what, everything is okay, you're not, there's nothing majorly wrong. You've been a healthy kid, you've been active all your life, it can't, like, you don't probably have anything at all. And then I get handed this book of symptoms, but then everything ticked. And so I was like, oh my God, I was right, like all my anxieties were right, because I could feel every little thing in my body. I was like using the loo way too frequently. I was drinking way too much water. I wanted sweet things when I don't actively go and look for them. So it just all set it off. And when we do the tests at a lab, the fasting, the postprandial, they come at like 400 and 700, and the lab technician is frantically calling saying, you have to come now to get your results. These are very wrong. And I go by myself. And then when I went to the doctor finally the same day, he was just like, you shouldn't even be standing right now. कि ये तो बहुत गलत है जो नंबर है आपका, and you need to be on insulin right away. And the one thing that it did, and I remember being so thankful for it, was it instantly fixed my vision. Like my blurriness was gone because it was bothering me so much up until that time. And you know, I think like it didn't hit me at all. I don't think कि कोई conception था कि we just knew then that ठीक है, okay, you know, now this is a thing. And forever and ever now, each time whatever it is I do, I stay stuck to my insulin, which can be a hard pill to swallow when you have been living your life a certain way. But the sooner you accept, I guess, is better.
Right. Thank you so much, Sandhya. What a lovely ending. The sooner you accept it, the better.
It
Uh,
took me a while. It took me forever. I think I spent too many years, at least about 8 to 9 years, before I was like, I cannot keep pushing this to the back of my mind.
right.
So
I think, of course, it's such a huge change. It's a trauma ultimately that
yeah,
you have to live with for the rest of your life. But it's a trauma that also has its pros and cons. When
yes.
it doesn't come just with cons, is what I'm just gonna say. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I have one continuous question that's going in my head, and I want to bring, just kind of related with superstition, that when people used to tell you that, oh, nothing could just, you can see everything. And then you suddenly started having the blurry vision. Did you think that was that the first thing that you thought, that किसी ने नजर लगा दी है मुझे?
No, no, I guess because I think we don't really think like that back home
Right.
also, and I'm also not that religious. But no, that was not a sense at all. But it didn't make any sense from the point of view where I had a very active childhood. Like I
Correct.
was always constantly doing 2 to 3 things at a time,
Right.
and a lot of exercises. I used to swim, I used to do karate, I used to dance for many years. So it didn't make any sense despite that. Like, so how could it be possible that I got this and had such a healthy childhood? But then the diagnosis came out as an autoimmune condition.
Yeah.
And the doctor, to explain, said, the way some people get thyroid halfway out of nowhere, basically that's exactly what it is. And that's when I started seeing an endocrinologist. So
Right.
uh, I feel like that helped me. The first thing कि तुम्हारे वजह से नहीं हुआ ये जो तूने कुछ नहीं किया, and it's just something that happened.
That is very important to for everyone. I think the first thing that we think when we get diagnosed as maybe teenagers or adults or for family is that they blame themselves. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe that we did something wrong or
Hmm.
I did something wrong and that is why this
Hmm.
happened. And despite of having healthy childhood or very active childhood or you being completely normal, healthy child,
Yeah.
you can get type 1. And you can get type 1 at any point of time in your life, actually, at any age.
Yeah.
So we have to rule these things out and just come to the part where you said that you need to accept it. It's a hard
Yeah.
pill to swallow, but you have to do that. But you were put to insulin immediately, right? So
Immediately. Yeah. And in fact, like because it was so high at the time that I had gone to the hospital,
right,
they got me on Actrapid through drips.
right.
And they were balancing it out with Mari biscuits and all of that. But I think I might have spent like a full night being on insulin
Right.
intranasally.
What is interesting in your story is that it was not the typical four T's. It was the first
Yes.
thing that we saw as
Yeah.
blurry vision. So I think this is very important for whosoever is watching this, for all the viewers, that sometimes those are not the four T's that we are looking for.
Mm.
Sometimes even if it's blurry vision, which also happened with Sakshi as well, that while operating, she had blurry vision. So that's also a symptom. If it's completely unexplained, then please, of course, the first course of action is that you go and get your eyes tested, but it can be a sign of you developing diabetes. So thank you so much, Sandhya. This was so interesting. All
So,
right. So before I wrap this up, I just have one final question to all my panelists who have been so nice and nice to share their stories coming out in the community and telling everyone how they were diagnosed. Just one question, and we'll take it. We'll go one by one. What is one message that you would like to give to the community members when it comes to timely diagnosis? So, Sakshi, can we begin with you?
Yeah. My message would be कि किसी भी तरह का weight loss, any unintended weight loss needs to be investigated, whether diabetes or not. But when you have that cluster of in signs and symptoms happening to you, please don't delay your testing. Just go and get it done. And like you said, that it can happen at any age group. बच्चे हो, बूढ़े हो, एडल्ट हो, आपकी चाइल्डहुड कैसी भी रही हो, आपने ज्यादा मीठा खाया हो या नहीं खाया हो, type 1 can happen at any age group. So whether you're 25, 28, 30, 12, just any unintended weight loss, just get it investigated.
Thank you so much, Sakshi. And just adding to that, that it necessarily, like, except for Dhruvi, none of us have people who are living with type 1 in our families.
Yes, definitely.
So just be a little mindful about that as well. Okay, it is not important कि आपकी family में हो ही हो. And with that, I'll come to Dhruvi. What is your message?
I think my message would be like, if you have a child who is diabetic, or if you yourself are diabetic, just get it tested for your siblings as well. जरूरी नहीं है आपको हो, and I hope ना हो, but it's always better to get it tested.
Thank you so much, Dhruvi. I think this is a very, very important message for everyone that, if one child has it, please do a genetic testing. Speak to your doctor that if there is any way that you can also get maybe reports for rest of the family members and especially the other child, so that you're already prepared.
Yeah.
But no, thank you so much, Dhruvi. Shivangi?
Thank you. I think my ending comment, as I mentioned earlier as well, I personally believe that diabetes education is very important. So again, our institutions, our teachers, knowing what it is actually like and looking out for symptoms in kids. And also, after being diagnosed, managing the condition is something that we can do really well. And although it is chronic, it is something that we have to live with all our lives. We can indeed manage it really well, is what I would like to say to the community.
Thank you so much, Shivangi. This was so important. I mean, for institutions, especially for schools and colleges, where we spend most of our time. School में 8 से 9 घंटे रहता है एक बच्चा, and teachers की नजर में ज्यादा रहता है. So maybe it becomes very important for schools, especially teachers, and to know कि अच्छा ऐसा भी कुछ होता है, because type 1 is said to be a juvenile condition. As we already mentioned, that it is necessarily not a juvenile condition anymore. It can happen to anyone at any point of time, but diagnosis does happen during childhood as well. So if somebody is working with a college or maybe an MNC or even a school, please do let us know. We do awareness drives. So one of our associates, some of our anyone who works with diabetes can come and kind of acquaint you with diabetes awareness. Just not type 1, but there are other types of diabetes as well. जैसे ध्रुवी को लेट ऑनसेट मतलब बहुत स्लो ऑनसेट वाली है, तो there are other types of diabetes as well, and people should be aware about it. So, but thank you for pointing that out, Shivangi. And do let us know if you want to go for if you want to invite us for a detour. We would love to, come and talk about our experience of living with diabetes and talking about other types of diabetes as well. And lastly, Sandhya, what's your message?
Yes, I would say don't be complacent.
Yeah.
Just as a way of summing up everything that's been said now, I don't think. I feel like on some level, like you were saying the other day, our experiences all tend to match.
Yeah.
And I guess they are different because of the way that we as individuals tend to deal with them. I think living with type 1 all these years has definitely taught me so much. It's taught me to pivot better if things don't go the way that you want it to go. It's taught me resilience, to roll with punches and get back up. So, like, हो सकता है, like, it could be a good life, जैसे कि हम है, but it may not necessarily be the death knell that we think a chronic condition like this could be. And just sort of be aware and catch things without being like, ऐसा कुछ नहीं हो सकता, मेरे को नहीं हो सकता.
Right. Thank you so much. This is so important. I think just go, if you see there is something wrong, just go get yourself tested immediately. And before I say thank you and do the formal ending, I just have a few things to cover before, for our viewers basically. So, again, coming back to the JDRF's type 1 index, it says that if we promptly diagnose everyone affected by type 1 diabetes in India, we could restore 3 years of healthy life per person. And that's a big number. And it is easy to ignore early signs of diagnosis until it's too late, as someone with type 1 diabetes requires insulin immediately after diagnosis to survive. So, the basic thing here is that जितना जल्दी डायग्नोसिस होगा उतनी जल्दी आप इंसुलिन पे डाले जाएंगे एंड उतना जल्दी जो है you can restore the healthy years of your life. So that's I think from Sandhya's, my side, Dhruvi's side, Shivangi's side, and Sakshi's side, this is one message that we want to really give out, that if you see a sign, catch it as early as possible, because that can really help someone that can prevent a lot of things that could have possibly gone wrong. So, once again, thank you to each one of you for coming out, telling your diagnosis story, sharing such amazing messages to our community. Heartfelt thank you from the Diabetes Foundation and the community. And thank you to everyone who is watching this or will watch this. It has been pleasure to host you all today, and we'll see you in yet another workshop, panel, maybe a B2B session or a diabetes. Thank you, everyone, and have a great